Hi, welcome to the last video of this lesson. Okay, today we are going to talk about how to consolidate data from several or different data sources. Okay, this step is key. Okay, so let's start. First of all, what's data consolidation? Data consolidation is the process of integrating data from multiple systems, departments, or formats into a unified repository. Okay, for analyzing that information. So, key aspects of consolidation. Okay, it eliminates data silos and duplications. Okay, that a data silo it's some information or data which is just in a specific place, okay, or in a specific department and it's not shared. Okay? Consolidating data eliminates that silos and promote an open environment where information is shared. Okay, and also consolidating that information reduces duplications because we can have the same document five different versions, for example, and each one has their own version with their own changes, and which one is the real one. We have it's important to promote data consolidation in an open and collaborative space where there is just one version, which is the last one. And we can implement access control and a log of editions that you can handle, which is the versions control, okay, and that you can come back to an older version if needed due to some errors that you can introduce in the system, okay. And why is it important? For sure, it provides a single source of truth. There is just one good document, and the real one is this one, okay? And also it enhances that accuracy. There are not errors in the versions of each teammate, and it enhances also decision making. Well, and it boosts productivity and some operational efficiencies in the day in a daily basis because we are not asking other departments to share the last document version because you can access inside DocuWare, SharePoint, OneDrive, Google Drive, different platforms in order to see the last version. Okay. Well, first of all, we need to catalog that documents, okay, or that data set, that information. So we should begin by mapping internal data sources from our organization, okay, and external data sets that we are using. Okay, there we should include databases, applications, cloud services that we are using, spreadsheets, and APIs, or some integration through API where we are accessing data sets from other companies. Okay, it helps us to prioritize sources for consolidation. Okay, the steps would be the next ones. It's first to create a data inventory. In which system is that data located? Which formats? Who is the owner of each data set? Which frequency are we using to update that data? If it's daily, hour, by seconds, by minutes, is just enough once per month, once per week. Okay, depends on the frequency that we want to introduce. Then we should identify duplicate documents in order to have a common version. Some inconsistencies in formats, naming, or other aspects that we should correct. Okay, and if there are some undocumented sources that we have that data but we don't know which is the origin or who is the where is this data source coming from. Okay, so it's important to check that undocumented sources too and to decide if it's convenient to use it or not. Okay, if we don't know the origin, we don't know if we can trust that information or not. Okay, and then we should determine the value of each data set regarding to the business impact, okay, the potential impact. Well, one of the steps which is critical is to standardize the formats, okay, and to have some homogeneity in data structures, okay, because sometimes we will face spreadsheets or documents from Excel or OpenOffice or different. Each one is processing that documents in different formats like XLS, XLSX, ODS. They are both spreadsheets of the same type of documents. Okay, but in order to process them into the big data, we need to use CSV document. Okay, so we should transform or convert all of that formats to CSV in order to use the standard. Okay, and the same happens with the XML, which is also another very used format in web design and error logs or some registering, etc. But we should transform it into JSON format in order to be more accessible to unstructured data databases, unstructured databases, or also structured databases. Okay, both SQL and NoSQL, so we can understand that documents. Okay, CSV and so on. Then we should harmonize file names, units, measures, date format. We have a standard. Okay, in order to mm, process in the following steps in order to process data information. Okay. And then, as said in the previous slide, we should also align data schemes using mapping templates in order to in order to see the relations between different databases and how are affecting different, um, yeah, how are they interacting between each one, and there are relations between files. Fields in one document that is the same one in the other one, and how are we doing that relation from one source to another one, or from n number to n, and it's important to do it. Okay, then once we know we have standardized the documents and we have a clear data set and we have clear documents, etc., we should choose which consolidation strategy we want to implement or to deploy, okay, depending on what we are using. Okay? If we are using a structured data, which is very clear, well organized, and centralized, and we have all of the data clear to and ready to use, we can opt for a data warehousing, okay, which is a centralized repository for historical analysis of structured data, okay, data warehousing. Then we can use data lakes if we are processing semi-structured and structured data, and we are using NoSQL technologies. And also we can store both the raw versions and also the different structured, semi-structured, and structured data. Okay. Then an ETL pipeline. We will discover more about this in the next videos, which stands for extract, transform, and load data, okay, into the target systems. And then there are other query engines, which we can access that data through a query without migrating or moving the data from other place. Okay, so it's interesting. I think I told you about Power Query, but it's important that you learn how to use it. And also, it's also important to use DAX for some processing calculations and some transformations of the data. And if you could be able to learn Python, you will be more prepared to work on big data. Okay. Well, once we have this strategy clear, then we need to develop some algorithms in order to detect duplicates, to adapt formats from date, from currency, from decimals, etc. And we should prepare the code or the algorithm in order to to clean and deduplicate um, some data sets, or some registers. And also it's important to find duplicates in the data. Sometimes if we are merging documents from, I don't know, from production from this week, and then you take the other week, maybe you are, without even noticing, you have moved or you have merged documents in the same document, mm, I don't know, like 2 hours that are overlapped, and you have some duplicated results. So you can use algorithms in order to detect them and remove them and keep it as it should be. Also, some like, yeah, some conflicts is what I said. Validate again, merge data sets against the source values in order to double check if it's correct, and some business strategies or rules to see that the data is consistent with the strategy. And as always, I repeat, cybersecurity and security is key, it's essential, it's critical for today's businesses. Okay, so it's important to store the consolidated data in a secure environment, okay, with appropriate access controls. And it's important also to use a scalable environment that allow you to growth that data, both in volume, in features, in speed, in all of the possibilities, in order to take the most profit. Okay. So some best practices is to use cloud storage. The cloud is the more scalable environment where you can deal and work with handle data. Okay. If you have some sensitive data that you don't want to have in cloud and you prefer to have it because physically keep, you can opt for a hybrid storage where you have some physical storage at your office or your factory and some other cloud solutions, and you are integrating both environments depending on the task that you are performing. You can have both physical and cloud storage, okay, in your own servers, uh, physically and in the cloud. Then it's important to define the roles, the permissions that each team member or each department has regarding to which folder or directories and even to which documents, okay? And also to use the most recent encryption techniques to work to deal with sensitive data like passwords, personal data, uh, recipes from I don't know, the Coca-Cola recipe. You have it very encrypted. Okay, that data is very sensitive and is core to the business model. Okay. Also, another best practice is to integrate a business intelligence tool, as said before, like Tableau, ClickView, uh, Power BI, in order to process that or analyze that information and access the information in a more visually appealing or attractive manner. Okay, and then also to monitor access and set some alerts, alarms, and all of that in order to prevent cyber attacks or unauthorized access from our own team. Okay, and that will be everything from the first lesson of the big data, okay, module. So let's see on the second lesson. Bye.